Hello guys, and this video is going to be a beautiful combination of the Russian geography lesson because the Ukrainian drones, and not just drones, have neutralized a number of Russian military industry objects in Taganrog, Nizhny Novgorod and Kazan, but we will also visit The Hague. And right now it is for the NATO summit, which turned out to be less of the disaster than we expected here in Ukraine and actually gave some promising statements about Russia as the main threat. No, not even China, but Russia, and Trump heard that. And it's kind of symbolic that we're talking about that in The Hague, a place where I hope Putin will be present sometime soon after the defeat of Russia and the collapse of his regime. So let's discuss what happened in The Hague, but also what happened in Taganrog, Nizhny Novgorod, Kazan, and other regions of the Russian Federation that turned out into a war zone, and all because Russians and Putin wanted that. And personally, I believe that the results on the front lines, both in Ukraine and Russia, mean a lot for the decisions of NATO, the mood of Trump, and most importantly, peace in Ukraine, Europe, and the world. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see Putin in The Hague, but not for a NATO summit, subscribe, I'm sure we will discuss that on the channel sometime soon. And let's start with the most important things, and here it is not a NATO summit, but explosions in Taganrog, Kazan and Nizhny Novgorod. All of these are the regions of the Russian Federation, and all of the objects demilitarized were involved in the production of various instruments of war. Taganrog is located not that close, and there an extremely important plant was targeted with something unknown. I love it how they describe things in the Russian media, and most likely these are Ukrainian drones, but having heard more about the test of new Ukrainian ballistic missiles, I've reported about that yesterday, do check the video on that too, it can be something different. But the most important thing is that explosions and fires were observed on a plant involved in the production of various things connected with drones. First of all, Orion drones and various details that they use for FPVs and detection, GPS, and so on. You know that this war is a drone war. Another proof why the world needs Ukraine, why NATO needs Ukraine, not just Ukraine needs NATO, because this is a totally different war from the one many NATO countries were preparing for. And that Atlant AERO plant was located in Taganrog and is an important part of the whole chain of plants and military industry objects that are involved in the development, production, maintenance, and upgrade of Russian FPVs. You know that many of the technologies they've borrowed from Iran before Putin failed to support another regime and it was neutralized, same as Syria. That is, by the way, another important argument that Russia is super weak. It cannot back up those who backed it up. I'm sure that the Iran regime was confident Putin can help them, but turns out Putin can help himself. And we see that with explosions in Taganrog, with the fact that Russian air defense is totally absent. They were totally unprepared to defend themselves on the Russian territory. And now dozens, not just Kursk and Belgorod, dozens of the Russian regions are a war zone. And they had to close airports again in Kazan. Kazan is the capital of Tatarstan. Tatarstan has a great potential to become independent one day. And all because back in 90s, they actually proclaimed their independence, but later it was suppressed, the constitution was denied, and lots of Russian military production sites are now located in Tatarstan, both to safeguard them because they were far away from the front lines and Russians thought that can help them. But you see, with drones, this doesn't work. And I'm sure you remember spiderweb operation and the fact that drones operated from inside Russia. And also that's the way perhaps to frighten people of Tatarstan. But after the collapse of the Putin's regime, a lot of the things can change. Remember to subscribe to witness that together, and I can imagine how we will discuss that on the channel in our amazing community. But please do share the videos you see In the world of toxic Russian propaganda, social media can change a lot, and I'm very grateful for every comment, every like, and every share. So in Kazan, um, there was no internet, no airports, because Ukrainian drones kept demilitarizing their military objects. And in the situation when their air defense fails, they try to turn off internet. I'm sure soon they will stop mobile connections. And it is, by the way, also good to prevent Russians from sharing videos. They are totally media illiterate. Here, you know, in Ukraine, people don't share videos. By the way, that is an answer to some questions that I kept receiving after this video footage from Iran attacks on Israel and how Israel air defense works. Israel is, I don't want to be mistaken, but like 40 times smaller than Ukraine, like tremendously smaller than Ukraine. It's approximately the size of my region, and we have 24 of such regions, and my region in Ukraine is one of the smallest. So they don't hide the locations of their air defense, and it's way better. It's an Iron Dome, it's well developed. And in Ukraine, it's a priority to hide the locations because Russians keep targeting them. And also because these missiles, they travel longer distance in a country that is the largest in Europe. And that's the reason why we don't have that like film-like videos of Ukrainian air defense working. Actually, in Ukraine, it's prohibited by law to share videos of the work of your air defense, because the day after tomorrow, Russians can target a missile in that air defense and destroy it, and Trump will not agree to sell more. But I will tell you more about these Patriot systems that were also discussed on the Hague summit. So it's quite logical. If you want to know the truth, you can get this truth. And also, if you follow people like me who speak about the war in Ukraine, being in Ukraine, it actually helps a lot to build the picture. So the final geography lesson today is about Nizhny Novgorod, and there, finally, we've targeted oil, gas, and chemical refining plant, and maybe the ban was lifted. I think that our strategy to target Russian oil refineries turned out to be very successful. Russia is a gas station, nothing else. They do not innovate. They do not build anything interesting. They are not competitive on the markets of the European Union or North America. They simply keep stealing resources from their republics, actually those that are too far away from Moscow, and keep selling them. And that's how they survive. And with oil prices now dropping again, and if this Israel-Iran war turns out to be short, Russia is lost, because their only hope is this high prices, high oil prices. That's the reason why they actually betrayed Iran. But if it turns out to be short, nothing can save Russian economy from the collapse, and Ukrainian strikes on their oil refineries, like this recent in Nizhny Novgorod, will simply speed up the process. And that's what we have to do, because we have to defend ourselves, and our resilience, our strengths can actually change a lot and change the attitudes of many people. It was really interesting to observe what happened today in The Hague. Here in Ukraine, we had like the worst expectations possible, because there's so much manipulation. People didn't want to see Ukraine, not to disappoint Trump. And those of you who are very attentive, and especially my moderators, I love them a lot. They have noticed that I'm a little bit disappointed, and like you could get why, because like literally every night Putin targets Ukrainian civilian buildings with drones, and you don't see any reaction at all. But it seems like there is some communicative strategy to outplay Trump, and he had to be very involved during this NATO summit, actually declared that America is always with NATO, that he did not plan to withdraw, and that he considers Zelensky very, very, very nice. And Zelensky was wearing something like a suit. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to Zelensky to pretend that he like worships Trump, because Zelensky is a sane adult and he sees that Trump's behavior is not very logical. But I guess Rutte and the team from the European Union persuaded him, and it seems to have some positive effect. So at least Zelensky managed to persuade Trump that Putin is not winning, and Trump actually said that he was surprised that Putin is so difficult to negotiate with, and there was no ambush, and that is already a success. So perhaps to like, if these jokes aside, perhaps the greatest success of this summit, with Trump in the center of this summit, was that NATO acknowledged Russia as the greatest threat. So now it's official. Well, like, it's so obvious. Unfortunately, we live in this post-truth or even post-truth world, so you really have to acknowledge that. But finally, all of them, in the presence of Trump, that did not shout, that did not deny, acknowledged Russia as the greatest threat, not even China. And that is important news. And I've seen some accounts now reporting that a jet is traveling from Russia to the United States, maybe to try to change Trump's opinion. I know it's very possible. I know that Trump can like Zelensky today, hate him tomorrow, but still, I'm very grateful to the leaders of NATO and the European Union that Ukraine was involved, that they did not change their opinion and kept insisting on the fact that Russia is the aggressor and Russia must be defeated and demilitarized. Do follow me on X, I share a lot there, on Instagram for everyday life updates, on Blue Sky and Threads, and we have an amazing Discord community. I'd be happy to chat with you this Saturday 9 p.m. live if you're available. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. That's an honor. Remember to check my new video on my channel, Anna Danilchuk, where I actually share more of an ordinary Ukrainian's opinion about NATO. And I'd seem it's super up to date, taking into account that this NATO summit in The Hague is taking place right now. So if you want to know how our attitudes changed during these years of the renewed independence, check the video. I connect the link here. And I personally think it is very objective and represents an ordinary Ukrainian perspective on Ukraine-NATO relations. And check our merch shop. The link is in the description of this video for a lot of really good products that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and we honestly need that a lot. Thank you once again for being friends of mine, for being friends of Ukraine. United we stand. Slava Ukraini!